started. So, okay, can remember. Somebody's singing.
Oh, my grandchildren just walked in the back door. I didn't know you could hear that.
That's all right.
Oh,
That means that's life in your home.
that is.
If my granddaughters were around, it would be much louder than that. I can promise you that.
She was really loud coming in.
That's
though.
all
I
right.
tell you, I'm on the other side of the house.
Because you didn't sleep all day?
Let me do this. Dr. I'm going to mute all, and Dr. Revis, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. I thought Dr. Bishop did a great job.
Oh, she always does an amazing job. And and again, I mean, the hour's gone before you know it.
I know she keeps the pace moving very, very nicely, but stops and
Yeah,
gives people time to ask questions. So she just does an amazing job.
I really like her style, the way she does things.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Well, it's 7 o'clock, Dr. Revis, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And if you would, I'll let you, or I ask you to open up the class.
All right. Well, welcome everyone back to week 2. Is it hard to believe that you're already in week 2? And I hope you've had a good week and have stayed safe and warm and have not been bothered by this big storm with power outages too much. But hope you've had a good week and hope you've had an opportunity to meet with your administrator and start thinking about that PLC and hopefully getting that PLC meeting set up in the next few days. So we've got a lot to talk about today. And so let's go ahead and get started.
Okay, let's look at, and this should be found under week 2 in Blackboard. This is our agenda. This is basically how we're going to try our best to operate things today. Do a quick, just a quick review of task 1 of the AAPSL in review. And then I want us to go back and look at Blackboard again, so you'll know when work is due by the end of this week, where you go and what you have to do. So I'm going to go into Blackboard and I'm going to show you those things, and Dr. Revis is going to do the same thing. We're going to go into detail about the peer review process, Dr. Revis is, and Blackboard, and then this is going to be revisited on Thursday night. Dr. Hamilton's going to do a presentation as well, because this assignment will be due, will be coming up soon, so you need to know how to handle that. Then we're going to go into task 2 of the AAPSL, because after this week, remember, you will always be completing a task and you will be submitting a task for review. And then I will come back to this at the end and I'll show you, remind you of things specifically, what is due and when it's due over this week and next week. But with that in mind, Dr. Revis, if you would just give us a review of task 1.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen if you'll stop share.
Okay, there we go.
Okay. And I want to look at just a quick look at your task 1, if I can find it here. Can you see my screen, Dr. Stedman?
No, not yet.
Okay, I'm going to have to go about it a different
Okay,
way.
now I can. Well, I
Okay.
I could, and you take it back.
Okay. What about now?
Yes, it is now. Yes.
Okay, great. So this is just a quick look at task 1, and this is in under week 2 and down below the agenda and everything. So you're going to start out by doing your school profile, and we spent a lot of time on that last week, both on Tuesday and Thursday evening. And then your PLC research, a minimum of 3 resources. And I think you've known by now that one of them has to be from Dr. Richard DeFore. But in this PLC research, what you want to cover is what is a PLC? What does a good PLC look like? How is a good PLC conducted? What are norms? And this is about what the research says. This may not be necessarily the model that you are using in your school, because a lot of times in our schools, we call every meeting of teachers PLCs. But we want you to delve down and into the research, particularly of Richard DeFore, and at least 2 more references. And Dr. Bishop, if you were on just before this class, gave you some other good authors to look at there for the PLC research. The next section is where you select your PLC members, and no names. You can put initials and a last name, or you can do teacher A or member 1, but no names. Why did you choose them? What are their strengths? What do they bring to the table? What are their educational credentials, etc.? Then you're going to have your first PLC meeting, and you're going to talk about that. And I like to call this meeting kind of an organizational meeting, where you are discussing the purpose of your PLC, and you're setting the vision and establishing norms. And there are some really good materials, again, under week 1 and week 2 and week 3 about PLCs, norm setting, and those kinds of things. Then you have your reference section, and we talked a lot about references and the style that you need to have for your references. And then you will have your appendices. At a minimum, in your appendix section, you would want to have a copy of that email to your administrator asking permission to set up your PLC and the affirmative response. You would want to have your meeting agenda and minutes and a sign-in roster. And we encourage you to include a picture of yourself presenting or a link to the presentation if you want to record it, or if you're doing it virtually. And then lastly, we just ask you go back through and check your template to make sure all of your headings are correct. So with that said, let's now look at our helpful hints document. And that one, what I want to do is I love this document. You will use it a lot, because what it talks about there, what I've just talked about, an example follows that. So your school profile, and here's an example of the school profile. Notice most candidates do go ahead and name their school, but you don't have to. You can use initials or whatever. A school profile is a thorough picture of your school. And you can see this example. And also note that this person also includes a citation for where she pulled this data and these demographics. Oh my goodness. So a good school profile, and then prompt 1, your PLC research section. And here is DeFore right out of the bat. Notice when I mention authors, I never mention the first name. It's always DeFore, and this happens to be a DeFore et al. So we know when I look at that, I know there's DeFore and at least 2 other authors with this particular citation. So there's DeFore. Here's a second one, Henderson. And here's a third one, and I think she even has a 4th one here. Again, This is just a strong, effective PLC focuses on the purpose of a PLC, etc. All those questions that I just talked about. This example is your PLC selection. Talks about the meeting with the principal, how she decided to make those PLC selections. And then she talks about the members. Of course, she used initials. This is why she was selected. 30 years of experience between coaching and teaching, and so on and so forth. Tell what they bring to the table, why you selected them, and why you believe they're going to be a strong contributing member of your PLC. And then here's an example of the PLC meeting. During our first meeting, in this particular school, all the PLCs have norms, so they develop their norms quickly for this newly established PLC. Talks about the vision in the next paragraph, how it's related to student achievement. And finally, they talk about that they are going to establish and set their next PLC meeting. And then here's an example of references. Don't forget, not only are your references double-spaced, but the second line of each reference and subsequent lines have hanging indents. And then you have your appendices starting here. And each appendix is going to be on a separate page. So you would have Appendix A beginning this page, and then Appendix B would be on your next page, and so on and so forth. So each appendix entry takes a page. Any questions on this?
Dr. Ravis, you might think that this is a silly question, but I just want to clarify. The template, asks us with the cover page, and there is a paragraph that talks about the purpose. Is that purpose included in what we turn in?
Remember, if it's in black, you keep it.
Okay, and
Everything
so we
in
just
black,
follow.
you keep it, right? And all the directions, if the directions are single spaced, but the body of your work is double spaced. But if it's in black, you keep it. If it's in yellow, you write about it. If it's in red, those are suggestions. You follow the suggestions, and then you delete the red from your work.
Okay, because that was my next question, because the directions were all single spaced. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah,
All right.
that's right. Leave the template as it is, but the body follows APA and you double space.
All right. One more question. I was using a unpublished raw data that was shared internally with staff members in terms of staff assignments and other things. And I was curious, I'd like to cite that. And I'm also trying to follow the APA format for that. Is that okay?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So Dr. Stedman, so you just mentioned in red, those are your suggestions. So when you say suggestions, you're just saying that you're making suggestions. That's not necessarily something we have to do. But those
No,
are
you don't have to. Those are some good things that I would think about, though. Okay?
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay, Dr. Revis, if you would, while they're asking questions, if you would stop sharing, Dr. Revis.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is there a maximum or minimum amount that we need to write for each of these parts? Sometimes I feel like I'm writing too much, and then there's parts where I feel like I'm not writing enough. So I was just wondering if there was a.
I would say when you know that you've done it, you've done it. Make sure that you have thoroughly covered it. Some people are more wordy than others, but if you've covered
That's
it
me.
and you know that you've covered everything, then we're okay with that. Okay?
And another question I had is when I did my sign-in roster, I was able to hold my first PLC on Friday, and I knew it said not to have names in there, so I just had their credentials, their roles in our school on there. Is that okay?
Teacher A and their role, yeah, that's just
Okay.
do it like that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good questions.
And
Okay,
I would just say about the length, that those examples for the different sections, that should give you a good guideline for how much information you need to have.
Mhm.
Again, doctor, this is a course. Sometimes you're going to think this is a course in writing. Yes and no. If
Mhm.
it's too brief, the evaluator is not going to think you've gone deeply enough, and we will send it back and tell you to go in more depth. But you know, there's so much narrative that you're going to have to put in there.
okay. Good questions,
I
though.
have a question.
Okay,
I have a question. Hey, this is Jasmine. My question is when they have a screenshot of the emails from the teacher to the principal and the principal's responding, you said there can't be a link. It has to be a picture of it, correct?
Correct.
yes, yes,
Okay.
because,
Okay.
yeah, that's
And one
good.
more thing, if I could just talk about, I had a candidate really get in trouble last semester. He started out using a Google Doc, and man, the formatting and everything just went crazy when he tried to convert it to a Word doc, because you're going to have to upload it in a Word doc. So forget Google Docs. If you've been used to using that, okay, but you start out in that Word template, which is in Word.
Right.
Don't try to do a Google and convert. You'll spend a lot of unnecessary time.
Exactly. I had thought about that too today, Dr. Revis. I'm glad you remembered that. Okay, we're back on our home page, and I want you to look here where it says AAPSL task and prompts. Now, Dr. Revis has done a great overview of what task 1 looks like. I want you to look here. Now, you have access to this. It's going to take me to AAPSL task and prompts. I want to go to the AAPSL scoring rubric. Now, your ultimate goal, you wouldn't be in this program if you didn't want to make the highest score on everything that you can make. Well, I want you to look at this. Now you need to review this. It's slow. Come
Because
on.
this is the rubric that your evaluator, that blind evaluator, is going to use
Right.
when he or she scores your work in task stream.
I want you to look at this. This is can you see it? Okay. Okay. Now you always want to strive for accomplished work. That is your goal. This is this is what now Dr. Revis and I can guide you to this. And when you put your work in for us to review, and we'll talk about that tonight and show you where it goes. When your peers review it, Dr. Revis is going to talk about peer reviews tonight, and we're going to do again on Thursday night. You do all of this because when you do your work, then, we're going to tell you things that you need to go back and fix so that your work may be here, it may be here, but ultimately we want to get it so that it is here. That's the purpose in review, and that's in the purpose, and Dr. Revis and me looking at it and sending it back before it goes in for a final grade. Now, this is what it says for task 1 that Dr. Revis has gone over tonight. This is what you've got to do at a minimum to be able to be considered for a 4. The 4 is the highest grade you can get. Research on PLCs must include a minimum of 3, have you heard that before? Sources, and be written in APA format. Now I want you to notice this conjunction, and that means you got to do that. And the candidate documents PLC members and their roles, strengths, and other significant details. Have you not heard that again tonight? But look at there. And the candidate leads the PLC in a meeting to discuss the vision and purpose of the PLC. You heard that tonight too, didn't you? And then finally, and the candidate used basic technologies to communicate with other members of the PLC. All of this is going to be looked for. Now we can guide you there, and we're going to send it back. If we don't see it, we're going to say you need to do this. But after that, we don't have time to keep sending it back. We may, but we don't have time. You don't have time. So your goal is to try to look at this and get it to us right when? The first time. Now you may have to do some revisions, but it should be minor when it gets to this point, okay? So always look at this each time and do your own checklist. Say, have I done this? Yes. Have I done this? Yes. Have I done this? Yes. Have I done this? Now, guess what? Everybody has their strengths and they have their areas that they're not so strong in. Some people, they're just not good at punctuation or spelling. If you know that that is a weakness of yours, then guess what? You find somebody that it's not a weakness for, and you say, I need you to read my paper before I submit it. I need you to put all the red places on there so that when it goes to Dr. Revis or to Dr. Stebbin, they're not going to send it back and say, you need to fix the commas, or you need to, you know, it's not a complete sentence. You need to make sure of that, okay? Try to get it, try to take care of those things ahead of time, simply because it slows you down the more we have to send it back, and it keeps you from being able to move on to the next task. So make every effort to try to get it as accomplished as you can the first time. Dr. Revis, any comments before we move on?
Well, again, you want to always turn in your best work, even though we say it's a draft. It needs to be your best work. I would also suggest trying to find someone who's willing to proofread your work before you turn it in. And that's just because, you know, we know what we want to say, and sometimes we just read words right into it that are not there, and or overlook our mistakes and read right through it. So I always suggest getting someone to look over it if you can. But you know, our goal is to get you to accomplish. We want all fours.
Yes.
But if after a couple of times of us sending it back, you know, if we believe it'll get you to proficient, then we'll tell you to go ahead with it. Okay.
But it hurts my feelings if you don't get fours. When it goes to the outside evaluator, honestly, it does. It hurts my feelings if my students don't get fours. So, you know, I feel like I've not done something right, even though I know I have. So, you know, don't make me feel bad. Don't make Dr. Revis feel bad. Give us a 4, okay? Promise. Okay. Okay, let's look at, okay, task 1. Now, task 1 is due this Sunday for peer and instructor review. Now, I'm not going to elaborate on the peer review, but let me show you what you do. When you finish it, when you know that you finished it, you've done everything that you know to do, and you're ready for Dr. Revis and me to look at it, and you're ready for your peers to look at your work as well, because they're going to look at the same work that we do. You see right here, AAPSL task for review. This is where you go. This is where you're going to go, and the same place where you uploaded the contact information for Dr. Revis and me to see and your peers, you're going to go to task 1. This is task 1 for peer and instructor review. You will have saved your work as a Word document. When you're through with it, you go to create thread. You put AAPSL task 1 for review. You browse your files. You find what you have saved. You put it in there and you submit. This goes to discussion board. It's the same thing as discussion board. It goes for the whole world to see. All your peers can see your work. Dr. Revis and I look at your work. We're going to look at it and we're going to make comments on it. And we're going to say after you have completed your peer review process, we're going to say that it's either ready for you to move on for final submission, or we're going to say you need to revise it and send it back to us for a second review. Okay, we will tell you when it's ready to move on. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, do not put it in for a final grade until we say that it's ready to go in for a final grade. So on Sunday night, you're only submitting for peer and instructor review. Okay. Let me see. There.
I'm going to, if we don't be pregnant.
Okay.
We ain't gonna be pregnant. You gonna be
Oh
pregnant.
Lord.
She
Oh
can be
Lord.
pregnant by herself.
Okay, I can't.
That's it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you don't want to start over.
No.
Oh. Whew. That's for real though. That's what we deal with, don't we?
Dr. Stedman,
Yeah.
just for my clarity, so when for this Sunday night, it's not a formal submission on Blackboard, it's just in that peer review, is what you're saying, just that one place.
No, it's a formal submission, but it's for peer and instructor review.
It's not a separate one. Okay.
Yeah, right. You're going to
just that one spot.
Yeah, and Dr. Revis is going to talk about this as well. But you go to that one spot. That's the only spot you have to worry about this Sunday, right, Dr. Revis?
Right. And that's why I mentioned before, even though it says draft for peer and instructor review, you want to turn in your best work that you can turn in every time.
Right.
It's
Dr.
still
Revis,
in a draft.
let me show one thing first. Did you see
Sure.
down here discussion board? That's the same thing as what I just showed you. So don't think that it's a different thing. That's the same thing as what you saw up there. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Revis. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, it stays in kind of a process for a week where you can make revisions based on our feedback to you. If you're in my class, my feedback, and feedback from your peers. You have an opportunity to make revisions. Now, we do give you a grade on that first review, and we will modify that grade, and it can go up if you have to send it back for us to do some more things. But we will tell you when it's time or when you're ready to turn it in for final evaluation. Okay.
And Jonathan, that's a good question. I will tell all of you, if you do what Dr. Revis and I instruct you to do, by the time it goes in for a final grade, there is absolutely no reason for you not to have a 4 on that, 100. There's no reason.
I have another question.
Sure.
I've been working using the template. When we turn it in, do we take that piece out of the template and turn it in, or do we turn in the template the same template as we go without the other tasks being completed?
You just send in task 1 only.
Okay.
Don't take away all the others where it shows task 2, task 3, task 4 until it has to be done. We need to look at each task individually in these submissions, and then at the end of completing all 5. Now, I would keep a running task and save it on the side, because Cindy, at the very end, you got to put them all together anyway. But for our purposes, just send it 1 at a time. Okay. And when it comes to task 2, only send task 2. Okay. Good question though. Dr. Revis, would you like to move on to the peer review process while we're
Sure.
camped out here? I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay.
Good questions.
Exactly. Let's talk about peer reviews. And first of all, I want to talk about the purpose of the peer reviews. There are many purposes. The first purpose is that it gives you practice in giving feedback, quality feedback to adults. I'm sure you are masterful and very comfortable in giving quality feedback to your students. But unless you've been in an administrative position or maybe an instructional coach, you've probably had very limited practice in giving quality feedback to adults. So this helps build your confidence, hopefully, and as you are giving that feedback. Secondly, it provides feedback to your peers to improve their work. Thirdly, it gives you an opportunity to see the work of others so you can get ideas on improving your own work. So those are the three reasons we do that. So let's talk about quality or descriptive feedback. And Dr. Hamilton pulled this together last semester, and I think this is really good. There are 5 key elements to quality feedback. It needs to be authentic, true, specific. This I want to really underscore here. When you're giving feedback, we need for it to be specific. If it's not specific, then, you know, your colleagues are going to be scrounging around trying to figure out what to do. It needs to be immediately. And we're going to talk to you about your timelines for your feedback. It needs to be clean, not attached to something else. So if someone is rude to you on a Zoom session, you know, you don't bring that into the peer review. And it needs to be confidential, not shared with others. So let's talk about the timely feedback. Your peer reviews are due Tuesday evening before each class session, and you have to do 2. So think about this Sunday evening. This Sunday evening, you are going to turn in your work, and by 9 o'clock, and then one of the first things you need to do Sunday night after 9 o'clock is go start pulling down the peer reviews that you are going to look at.
Dr. Revis, may I say something?
Sure, please.
Some students won't wait till 9 o'clock.
That's true.
What I would advise you to do Sunday afternoon and even Saturday, some will turn this in on Saturday. We will have, some of you will have this work turned in on Saturday. And based on what the weather's like, you may have it by Friday night, because you can't do anything else. So, but I'm just saying that I would look several times in Blackboard to see if there was work there. So that gives you a chance to begin working on your peer review process and not having to do it all at the last minute. You need to come up with some type of, you need to balance your time so that you can do these effectively, is my point. Okay.
And you will get in a routine and a rhythm for the program, but it'll take you a couple, 3 weeks into it until you kind of see how the workflow. It's very, very routine after we get into it. So let's go in and look at our peer review materials. So the first thing I want to show you is the template. Here's where you find your template. I went to peer review materials on the left-hand side, and I'm going to pull the template up. And you will use this same template all throughout the semester. Of course, you will enable editing. You put your name, you're the reviewer, you put your name here, and the author of the work of the task here. And of course, we're looking at task 1. There are 7 areas that you have to provide feedback. The first area is about content. The second area is where you talk about the strengths of their work. The third area is about the weaknesses. And then you cite examples of how they demonstrated leadership. You talk about their mechanics and grammar. Organization. And one of the things here we want you to check and make sure, did they follow the template? Are their headings correct? And did the work flow logical? And it will flow logically if you will follow the template and put it in that template. And lastly, APA formatting.
Dr.
So
Revis, go
yes,
back to weaknesses, strengths and weaknesses.
sure.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you, do not come to the rubric weaknesses and say, I do not see anything wrong. At this point, you are not at a place. We are challenging you to look for areas that need improvement. You learn from it and they learn from it. So I'm challenging you. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. You're not at a place. Now, by the time you get to the end of the AAPSL, we might can say, that they're at a place but at this point, everybody's learning. Everybody's learning. We're challenging you to stretch your brains. You're thinking you've got to learn this process to be effective. And all this needs to be constructive in everything that you do. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Revis. I'm sorry.
And no, that's fine. Thank you. And then I want to show you what I consider an exemplar. And again, this is in your peer review materials. So I'm not going to read this for you because you have it, but here notice that the rater gives an explanation that is specific, points out weaknesses, but also offers suggestions. When we get down here to this section about the strengths, make sure you are giving detailed feedback. And same thing for the
cite examples when you need to.
Examples, correct. And then when you look at weaknesses, be specific. You may want to give a brief written analysis of those statistics, explaining factors that influence your school scores. And this was when in the school profile. So it's constructive and positive, but it's also specific. Grammar and mechanics. You may want to recheck your APA format on your in-text citation, as I see a few errors on the first and third citation. Specific feedback, and so on. So it needs to be able so that person can take your feedback and really know what to do in order to improve their work. Now, I want to show you what I call a non-example or a non-exemplar. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to say that anyway.
I like it anyway.
All right. Can you see this non-exemplar? Dr. Stedman, did my screen change?
No, we can see it.
Okay. So I want you to look at this. Thank you for a great paper. No, that's not what you're doing here. Congrats on being an AP. All of the great or great form. Don't let me see great or good job or good work. Get specific with the feedback. Okay.
Now this absolutely that was unacceptable.
Yes, I sent this one back and I said, I gave it a poor grade and said, this is not acceptable work. Okay.
Well, actually it's a 0.
So let me tell you where you're going to put your feedback. You're going to go back for the people you're reviewing. Before I do that, let me talk about your teams just a moment. In my class in particular, we've had several drop. So I've updated the teams as of Sunday evening. I need to make one more update. You guys need to get together in the next few days and decide who is going to review who. All right. You do that through an email. Somebody can take the lead and just say, What if we do it this way? Remember, you've got to do 2. Everybody's got to do 2. So you're going to upload your peer review in 2 places. You're first going to upload it back in this thread that Dr. Stedman showed you before. You go in where you uploaded yours. Of course, there's nothing there, but when everybody's made their submission, you're going to be able to see everybody's name. And so you're going to go into the person's name for which you have created a peer review, and you're going to go into their thread and you're going to reply to them and upload your peer review. Okay? That's how your peers receive your feedback. Now,
Can
let
you
me show
repeat
you.
that, please?
You go into the same place where you created a thread to
Mhm.
submit your work. After everybody's submitted their work, then you're going to see a list of people's names, and you click on the one you're reviewing, and it'll open up, and you put you apply to that thread with your peer review. Excuse me. That's how your teammates get your peer reviews. Okay. Now, Dr. Stedman and I, you have to go to the completed peer review Dropbox to drop it in for a grade from Dr. Stedman and myself. And if you will look in AAPSL Task 1, there's a place to drop peer review 1 and a place to drop peer review 2. One for each of the peer reviews. And be sure you're on task 1 to do that. And you just upload it. And that way, Dr. Stedman and I are seeing that we're giving you feedback on your feedback. And that's what we talked about.
Dr. Evans, now remember, with the peer review, with task 1 peer review due by next Tuesday before class, that means you're going to submit 4 peer reviews. You're going to submit for your 2 classmates, your 2 people on your Zoom team that you peer review. You're going to send it to them, and then you're going to send it, those same 2, to us in the completed review Dropbox. You'll get a grade from us.
Right.
You will be giving it to your peers so that they can use it as a way of improving AAPSL Task 1 before it is submitted for a final grade. So you're getting feedback from 2 of your peers, and you're getting feedback from your instructor about task 1 before it goes in for a final grade. Okay, Alicia.
So we are only doing peer reviews for the people that are in our Zoom team. And
only 2.
Right. Only 2, but they have to be a part of our Zoom team. Like we have to wait until they post their AAPSL task 1, find their names, and then do a thread on their discussion.
That's right. Yes. Okay. Jonathan, you have a question?
Yes. If we did have difficulty, for example, maybe technology wasn't working with us on that day for turning it in, could we get help that evening from you for some reason if we had trouble? Because I know you said Tuesday have it turned in before class. The peer review.
What do you mean with the peer review? If you need help,
I haven't done it yet, so I don't know if I would run into any technical issues, and I just wanted to make sure I would have support.
Okay, well, you can call me if there's a problem, or you can call Dr. Revis. That's what you do.
Just reach out to us.
Just reach out to us, Jonathan.
And let me tell you what.
After you do it the first time, I promise you, it'll be like clockwork.
Okay.
It will. And again, it's the same 2 peer reviews. You've just got to place it where your teammate can see it. Teammates, and where we can score it. Okay.
So you're going to give it to us in the completed Dropbox. That's for your grade, and then you're going to go back over here, Dr. Revis, show them again where it goes for their peers.
It's right here where you're putting in where you uploaded your task one.
Back
Okay.
to that same place, and you're going to see their names.
Let me open up this. See, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see
Yes,
their names.
right, right. You'll see the names,
And
and
so you'll just click if I'm peer reviewing Mary's, she's going to have her work that she submitted, and then you just are going to reply to her work.
and when
Okay.
you reply, it's going to give you the opportunity to attach your peer review for her.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to discuss with our teammates whose paper that we're gonna review, correct?
Yeah, and the reason you need to do that is so that everybody can get at least 2 reviews. Now,
Okay.
this is why everybody must keep up, because after Tuesday, then, you can't be held hostage for somebody that chooses not to submit their work on time. If that's the case, you're going to let Dr. Revis or me know, and we're going to tell you to go to somebody else. Now, but we're going to know, but the person who did not do the peer reviews on a timely manner, your grades will be impacted by this, because it's not fair. It's not fair to your classmates for you not to submit your work in a timely manner and keep them from being able to do what they need to do.
If you're not ready to submit task one for review by 9 p.m. on Sunday, we expect some kind of email or phone call from you. Okay.
But it's not just because you went on a vacation. As a general rule, that should not be the case.
Right. So you have to pace yourself, because what happens is, let's say that Candor didn't turn her work in on Sunday night by 9 p.m. Then if Matthew is supposed to review her work, he can't start reviewing her work. It just slows everybody down. You're not only going to have it reflected in your grade, but you're also letting down your team members, because they can't move on and do their work.
Yeah.
So make yourselves, now that you've kind of gotten an overview of what this next week's going to look like, you've got to start making yourself kind of a to-do list and a timeline of when you're going to do what, in order to get your best work on task one submitted by 9 p.m. Sunday. Now, if you get it done before then, turn it in.
Turn it in. And it's like we've said before, after you get through this week and next week, you'll get the hang of it. And I promise you, it happens every time. It becomes second nature, and you don't have, I know it's new to begin with, and I know that you've got to get through it the first time. But after that, it will become much easier, and you'll figure it out. Dr. Revis, if you'll stop sharing, please.
Sure. And remember what we told you before. I know you've got to be overwhelmed with everything you're doing right now. And this is an accelerated program. And you've been told that even before you registered, but I don't think you really can get a picture of what that looks like until you get in the throes of it. Just give yourself about 3 weeks here, and the light bulb will come on, and you will get into that routine and pacing, and you'll be fine. Okay.
Okay. Let me see. And again, we're going to revisit this again on Thursday night, because we know that it's new. So by the time we go over it again on Thursday night, I think you're going to be okay. Can you see my screen now, Dr. Revis?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let's go. And what we're going to do, we realize that you're working on task one, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to just briefly, let me find it. Task one, prompt one. We need to go ahead and get talk about why you're doing task one, where it's leading. Okay. Task two, here it is. Okay. Now remember in task one, in prompt one, it was all based on what the research says. Okay. Now, once you get through with task one and you submit it by this Sunday evening, you immediately will begin on task two. This is what you're going to do. Remember, if it's in yellow, that means that you're going to write something. If it's black, it's going to stay there. This is your heading, data collection strategies. Your heading is data collection strategies. You will work with the selected PLC that you picked in task one, formed in task one, to determine the strategies that you're going to use to collect the data to determine the most pressing need for improving student achievement. You're beginning work with that team. The narrative work for this section will discuss those strategies. You're putting your plan together. That's basically what you're doing. You're with your team and you're planning together. This is what we're going to do. Now, I'm not going to read all of this, but this is the example we gave you. Data collection strategies. This is the author. When I first asked for permission to form my PLC, my principal suggested the team I formed to look at the 8th grade math data, as she believed it was the most pressing area of need within the school over the past 5 years. That's okay for your principal to say that. They're the principal. However, don't go into it with the mindset that it's automatically that, okay? Because it may not be. Your principal may be right. You may find something else, but guess what? At the end of the day, if it is something else and your principal still wants you to work on math, guess what you're going to work on? You're going to work on math. That's going to be your PLC. This is what they did. I set up a PLC meeting via Zoom. At that time, everything was virtual to accommodate the time restraints we are currently facing due to the morning meetings, blah, blah, blah. Through Zoom, I shared the data we agreed prior to use for, it went on to talk about, let me see, I want to come on. When we met as a PLC, we reviewed the data from both sources. And as I talked about some sources up there, we were able to review subgroups as well as end of grade data for all grade levels. We agreed that we wanted to focus on the lowest performing area. And then all you're doing is saying, this is my plan of action. It's a plan of action. Your strategies. It's a plan of action. You may not use all that stuff, but it's your plan of action. Now, number 2, your heading is criteria and process for identifying the most pressing need. Now, you're going to refer to all this stuff you talked about up here. Once the team and you have determined the strategies, all those strategies for collecting the data, this is how we're going to get what we need. You will decide what criteria and process will be used for identifying the most pressing. You got your stuff now. Now, what you going to do with it? The narrative work for this section will discuss the criteria and process. Now, look at this. When our PLC initially met for the first time, we discussed analyzing the current data that was available in order to observe trends that stood out to us. This aligned with and helped create our vision. The criteria for these trends were lower performing data consistently or subgroups that had a significant difference from others. The first step in this process was to locate the data for all 3 of the grade levels. The second step was to put the data that was collected alongside one another to observe the similarities and differences. And then the third step was to identify the lowest performing data between math and English. See, they're justifying now. They're beginning the process of justifying what that most pressing need will ultimately be. Finally, we agreed to examine the subgroups of the most pressing need identified to decide whether we would focus on a specific subgroup or what. So you see, there's a process there. Then you and your team, that is collaborative data analysis. Once steps 1 and 2 have been completed, you and the team will take a detailed look at all data that has been gathered. You should thoroughly disaggregate. That's, I think y'all call it data dives. A lot of you do. You're going to disaggregate that data by looking at all groups, all subgroups, everything. You're going to turn it every angle humanly possible. You're going to tear it apart. And you're going to talk about that. You're going to talk about what you see. You're going to put it all on the table. You're going to tear it. This is what I see. Jonathan, you're going to say, this is what I see. Then Alicia may be in that same group. Alicia's going to say, but now look here. And Jonathan's going to say, I didn't see that. I didn't realize that. So you see how all 3, 4, 5 of you are going to see something that's going to put it all together and give you something to think about and to look at. The collaborative data analysis. Our second PLC meeting met, blah, blah, blah. This is what they did. In reviewing this data, it was evident that our most pressing need was in mathematics. So the principal was right. Okay. So she's already said, this is my most pressing need. A member of the PLC brought up the fact that the 8th grade math team has been new almost every year as well, which may have contributed to the negative trends. Novice teachers can always, you need a blend of novice teachers with veteran teachers as much as possible. And it goes on and talks about that. On and on. You've got this in your Blackboard shell. And then finally, most pressing need. You've already set it up there, but then guess what? Our PLC determined during the second meeting that the most pressing need was 8th grade mathematics, as mentioned earlier. And they go on and they talk a little bit about why they made that decision. Okay, that's task 1. Dr. Revis, while you want to go ahead and talk about task, while I've got it on here.
Sure. So in task 1, that's your narrative work. Prompt 1 is your narrative work. Prompt 2 is where you tell the same story in a different way. You're going to graphically represent the work, the data sets that you and your PLC looked at. You're going to show the tables, the graphs, the charts, whatever you used. Now, remember, we're looking at student performance data and student growth data. Please, 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 in your first PLC meeting that you're having this week, please don't let your PLC members try to drag you down a rabbit hole that you're going to look at attendance and discipline. Just tell them that's not the purpose of this. So we are looking at student performance and growth. So you're going to just show one type of chart or figure right after the other, and you've got to describe what these different figures represent. So let's go on down. Once you do this, don't let me forget to come back to the green here, but let's look at the example of the different figures that you may have. Again, you see different figures. The first thing that they talk about, once you finish with task 2, then you must have a presentation to your administrative, and either your principal or your administrative team. And she talks about that in her first paragraph. Then she goes on and gives some screenshots of the different pieces of data that she presented during that presentation to her admin team. Now she's going to talk about some of the data that the PLC examined. Here in figure 4, you can see they looked at a comparison of 6th, 7th, and 8th grade proficiency across the district and across the state. And it tells you exactly what that graph is. Then she talks a little bit, gives a little bit of narrative. This is proficiency in both English language arts and math, da, 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 da. So don't just put a figure there with no explanation. You have to give a little explanation as to what you're showing and sharing. The next figure talks about growth, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade student growth over, I guess it's 3 years, if I could see that. It's so small. Again, scrolling on down, she gives a description of what it is. Just doesn't throw that figure out there. All right, and I think she
And let me
has,
point this out, Dr. Revis, when you're doing your graphs, do make sure that we can read it, that whoever is grading it can look at it. So this is good, but it's not big enough.
no. Your evaluators are not going to zoom in on things. So make sure if you're copying and pasting, make sure it's big enough for them to see. And then here's another figure that she's put in here that they looked at. And then figure 7 is where she starts zeroing in on those 8th grade math proficiency scores.
This candidate though did an excellent job with task 2, prompt 2. Did an excellent job with the visuals.
And then you can see at the very bottom, the very last thing she ends with is collaboratively, the PLC members she summarizes concluded that 8th grade math was going to be the area of biggest need. So she tells the picture, she tells the story narratively in task 1, prompt 1, graphically in prompt 2, and ends back up here, affirming the area of biggest need.
Okay. And the reason we went ahead and showed you task 2 is because some of you are going to be ready to start on this. I know you're task 1, once you get started on it, it's not going to take you a long time to put task 1 together and to get it submitted. I promise you that. Some of you are going to be sitting just ready to move on with task 2. So you're learning the trend. We're always going to get you prepared for the next thing while you're working on something already, so that you're not held back. You're able to move forward and to keep momentum with what the end result's going to be. But,
in one of the sessions, I can't remember if it was Thursday evening's class or last Tuesday, somebody asked, well, how often are we going to meet with the PLCs? You're going to meet with this PLC weekly for about 3 to 4 weeks. So when you do your first PLC meeting this week, go ahead and set a meeting for next week. And your goal for next week is your data dive, task 2. Okay? Questions?
okay. Dr. Revis, I'm looking at the chat box. Did we answer all the questions that people had put in chat box, or is there something that we need to answer?
Someone had a good question about, do we review the same people every week, or do we switch it around each week in our group?
That's up to you. You guys decide.
And again, you make it work how it works best for you.
I have there was one thing here. Do we submit the feedback review to the professors first and then to our peers, or both at the same time? I would encourage you to submit both places at the same time so you don't forget. Because one of the first things I start after I give you feedback on your task that's due, I get into those peer reviews very quickly.
And you'll find from both Dr. Revis and me. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is it going to make a difference if we peer review somebody, if someone gets to peer review twice?
Okay, we would like for everybody to have their work peer reviewed at least twice. Everybody, you need to try to work it in your Zoom team so that everybody is getting at least 2 peer reviews from somebody from the team. So somebody may get more than 1 peer review.
You
You
do
know,
2
based on-
peer review.
yeah.
Yeah, you do 2
Yeah,
peer
somebody-
reviews and you get 2 peer reviews.
Yeah, you'll get 2 peer reviews. You do 2 and you get 2. At a minimum, you'll get 2, or you should get 2, if you've turned your work in like you're supposed to. Okay. Are there other questions at this point? This has been good questions. You're coming along. I want to thank all of you for still being here week 2. Everybody's not here that was with us last week. You've decided that you want to do this, and we appreciate you moving forward with this.
If I could make a suggestion after this class meeting, it would be good if you could just do a group email in your peer review teams and start setting up who's going to do what. I think that would, we've got a lot of questions about, you know, how do I know who to review? You guys determine that.
Or you know what? It's a good time. Somebody in your team set up a Zoom meeting and do a quick Zoom meeting and do a Zoom and see each other face to face like we're doing and make a decision. You can do that.
Quick question, how long do our PLCs have to be? I know normally at school they're hour long, so should we do the same or?
No, I would say, DeAmber, you know, some of them may be initially, like when you do task 2 especially. Task 1 may not be but about 30 minutes, and that's okay. But I would say task 2 would be probably one of your longer time because you're going to be so concentrated on looking at the data. So
okay.
that will vary. You know, if you finished it and you've covered everything, then I'd say you're through. So
great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And Dr. Stedman,
Yes.
my peers asked me for how long we would be having this PLC. They just wanted to make sure that they were blocking that time frame for us to continue, and one just wanted to plan ahead. So are we looking 5 weeks, 6 weeks?
To begin with, Sri, yes, I would say the first 4 or 5 weeks are going to be pretty intense with PLCs. Then it will taper off some. Now, when you get to the AAPSL, there will be times that you have to meet with them, but a lot of that work's going to be more independent, and you will be bringing it to them and presenting to them. But the first 4 or 5 weeks are going to be more intense than any other time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And let me just go back and encourage you to go back and read for task 2. Go back and read those little examples under the headings, because this person, what they did is decided via email that who was going to collect what data, and they had it ready to go in that second meeting. So, you know, just go back and read those examples and think of ways that you can do some pre-PLC meeting work so you're not having to hold them so long during the session.
And that's good, Dr. Evans, because that's part of being an effective leader.
Yes.
That's good leadership.
Any other questions?
One more quick question. I did participate in the library talk before this. Is there anything we need to turn in for that, or?
No.
Okay.
No. And Jonathan, we'll have that, as we said, we'll have that recording to you hopefully before the week's over with. We'll have it in Blackboard for all of you to be able to go back and refer to it when you need to. You're really a great group of students. You're very attentive. I can already see that you're taking all this in, and I can see that it's already starting to come together. You can tell, can't you, Dr. Revis? I mean,
yes, and the questions are good questions.
Good questions. It's just not off the wall stuff.
But don't ever be afraid to ask an off the wall
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Okay?
I didn't mean that. You can ask it off the wall, but I'm just saying it's good, solid questions is what they are.
Yes.
Good
I have,
questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
So where do we submit, if we're recording our meetings, where do we submit the recording as an artifact?
You add that as a link at the end of your work, just like when Dr. Revis and I send you you know, the link to tonight. When I send you this, you'll have a link to it. You do the same thing, but just remember that that we must see the if you do that, that's just extra and it's good, and you can use that especially when you have to start putting things in your competency folio for artifacts. Those are excellent artifacts. So, but just know that they're probably, your evaluator's not going to open them up. Now, Dr. Revis and I will possibly open it up and look and kind of see how things are going. And you're actually going to have an opportunity to do some of that as a team as well later on. We'll talk about that. But I would encourage you to do that, but just put it as a link in there.
And we can do pictures or record, right?
I would do, if I did record, I would put a picture of myself presenting as well.
Gotcha. Thank you.
But it's a good question, because if you go ahead and do the recording, you're banking artifacts that you're going to have to use later on. So while you're doing it, go ahead and knock it out and just put it in the bank and know I'm going to pull my money out of the bank later on and I'm going to use it. Okay. Boy, y'all, some of you look serious now.
Okay, guys.
I do have one more question.
Okay,
and it's kind of personal, but I feel like I can share it.
Yeah, that's okay.
So my principal said that the most pressing need was ESL students. And he told me to go ahead and ask a couple of the ESL specialists to be part of my PLC. However, as you know, this year has already been very overwhelming for everyone all around due to coming back in person. And I could already tell that I was putting another responsibility on them when asking. So I guess my question to you is, if the principal, you know, said for us to use someone, if it was too much for them, could we go ahead and go to someone else that had more time?
Well, if your principal, if your principal's not going to, you know, if your principal wants that person on there, you still are accountable to your principal. However, just remember, if somebody doesn't show up, it doesn't stop you from moving with the ones that are there and doing what you need to do.
Okay. Sounds good.
Does that make
Thank
sense?
You. Yes.
I wouldn't rock the boat too much, DeAmber, if that's what they want.
Right. And that's how I was feeling. I was kind of like, you know, I don't want to, like you said, rock the boat. And there are two, and they asked me, could they rotate weekly? Like, could one? And I told them yes.
Yes.
So, and I even volunteered Zoom meetings to them. So
absolutely, that's a good plan to let them alternate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good questions.
If you did the library session tonight, you do not have to do it again Thursday night. It's a repeat session.
Right.
Same thing.
But like I said earlier, I learn something every time I listen to Dr. Bishop, and you know, you're welcome to join if you have time. Okay, other questions? Remember, we will come online with Dr. Bishop again at 6 o'clock, and then we will come together at 7 o'clock for our second coaching session. And remember, we will have 2 more coaching sessions after that, and then we will stop with the Thursday night sessions for a while. So that You know, you won't, you know, the first 3 or 4 weeks is pretty intense, but then it starts leveling off some. It's not as intense. But you see how we're building that foundation for you, and it is a lot right now, but you're going to look back and you're going to say, wow, I'm so glad I had those opportunities.
And guys, if you have questions about your task 1 or your task 2, I would rather you go ahead and get in touch with me. And I think I speak for Dr.
Me too,
Stedman
yes.
during the week before you start going in a wrong direction. Because, you know, you don't want to get behind. So if you have a question, you need to email us is probably the best way to get in touch with us. And if it's something that we feel like we probably need to talk to you about, then we'll tell you to call us.
Okay. Does that sound like a plan? Everybody good?
Okay.
Stay safe. We know that throughout the state, we're looking for bad weather pretty much statewide. I don't know, South Carolina, I guess you're going to be impacted by that as well. I don't know. I know North Carolina is. I don't know how it looks for South Carolina. So, but just be careful out there. This COVID stuff is still rising, so please be careful. Please be careful.
See you
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.